All right, young historians, here it is, one of the most misunderstood, confusing, controversial, and, for lack of a better term, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs aspects of our government system. And yes, it's written in the Constitution. And yes, you're going to get confused. And yes, you're going to have a ton of questions. It is our Electoral College. Presentation's a little bit of a introduction to the whole thing. You can use the notes handout here to scribble down some couple words and maybe even some questions, lower level, higher level, all of that. You can also post some questions on the poll everywhere. There's a link to it on AmericanHistoryRules.com, and we are going to try to make some sense of this bad boy in class the next time we see each other. Our target for the Electoral College, that you can explain and evaluate the presidential election process. If you can explain it, you're like better than 99% of the population when it comes to government. And evaluating it means, can you pass judgment? That's one of those higher level thinking skills that I love so dearly. So here we're going to get going. The first question we need to answer is, why did they make the Electoral College at the Constitutional Convention in the first place? If you remember, it was one of the debates that hopefully I am seeing in your, or compromises, that hopefully I am seeing in your constitutional target displays. Some people wanted Congress to elect the president, but if Congress elected the president, that would upset checks and balances. That would mean Congress was more powerful than the president. They didn't want that to happen. So then some people said, why don't we have the states elect the president? And that wasn't going to work because that would upset federalism. With the national government being more powerful than the states, if the states elected the national executive, that would give them too much power. And of course, some people wanted the people to elect the president, but we know that wasn't going to happen. The country was too big, they didn't have a lot of communication, they didn't have Twitter, they didn't have CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or whatever, they didn't have national newspapers, and they thought the people weren't educated enough. So instead they went yes to electors. At the convention, George Mason said, the extent of the country renders it impossible that the people can have the requisite capacity to judge the respective contentions of the candidates. In other words, the country's too big, they'll never know what's going on. So they went with the Electoral College. Now I'm throwing this out there already to have you think about. Now we can communicate. We know everything about these candidates. In fact, we know too much about these candidates, right? Do we still need an Electoral College? Ooh, that's a good question, Mr. Taft. Thank you, Mr. Taft. So here's how the original Electoral College was going to work. This is written in the Constitution. You read it. It's in Article 2. You probably didn't understand it because the way they wrote it is very, very confusing. That's why I get paid the big bucks to help you out. So here's the plan. Each of the states in the Electoral College would have as many electors as senators and representatives in Congress. And those electors would be chosen in each state. So basically, the states with the most population are going to get the most electoral votes. But we figure it out, the number, exact number, by how many representatives and how many senators in Congress. Electors would then cast 2 votes for president. The person with the most electoral votes would become president as long as those votes were a majority of the electoral votes cast. And the person with the second highest amount of electoral votes would be vice president. That's it. That's the plan. You vote for somebody in your state who you think is really, really smart, and they cast 2 votes for president. Whoever gets the most, hello, Mr. or Mrs. President. And whoever gets the second most, hello, Mr. or Mrs. Vice President. It's just that easy. Now, the electors are going to cast their 2 votes as independent agents, based on their free will. There were no political parties. There was no general campaigning. People did not seek the office of president. The office sought them. That's what gentlemen did back in the late 1700s. So the way it was supposed to work is way different than the way it works now. As you can see, in the first Electoral College, George Washington got every electoral vote. John Adams got the second most electoral votes. He became vice president. It also worked out that way in 1792, where George Washington got every electoral vote, and John Adams got the second most electoral votes, president and vice president. So this Electoral College worked perfectly twice. And it's probably because of George Washington being there. 1792, after that election, he's going to serve 4 more years, and he's going to say, I'm out. I want to go back to my farm and farm, because that's what you do at farms. And that's when things get a little dicey. The original Electoral College is going to change pretty quickly because they're going to realize that it's broken because something develops. That's political parties. If you're a Hamilton fan, you know that 2 political parties developed. We have our Federalists and we have our Democratic Republicans. Federalists was the party of John Adams and Alexander Hamilton and even George Washington, even though he wasn't in the party, Oliver Ellsworth, John Jay, people who were in favor of a strong national government. The Democratic Republicans, those were Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. Another one you're going to hear about is Aaron Burr, Henry Clinton. They were more in favor of the common man, and they wanted strong state governments. So the election of 1796 comes around, and electors are throwing out their votes, and now, all of a sudden, we have a president with the most electoral votes. That's John Adams. He's a Federalist. We have a vice president. That's Thomas Jefferson. He's a Democratic Republican. That'd be like having President Trump, Vice President Clinton today, which would be kind of nutty. So they instantly realized that there were some problems. The next election, though, is the big one. That is the election of 1800.
The election of 1800.
Can we get back to politics? Please? Yo.
If you're a Hamilton fan, you know this song with Burr, sir. This election is going to be a game changer, one of the 4 or 5 most important elections in American history. In the election of 1800, we now have political parties nominating candidates. Things have totally changed. The Republicans, Democratic Republicans, they wanted Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr to be president and vice president, while the Federalists wanted John Adams and Charles Pinckney to be president and vice president. If you know the song, you can realize that Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, they didn't really have the greatest relationship. They weren't palsy-walsy. And Aaron Burr was somebody who was actually seeking power. He was looking for the office. He was campaigning, which you didn't do back in those days. All right? But anyways, come election time, all of the electors were voted for, and then those electors cast their votes. And every Democratic Republican elector cast a vote for Thomas Jefferson right here and for Aaron Burr right here. So they tied because every Democratic Republican elector voted for both of them. Remember, then they had 2 votes. They tied, and then under the Constitution, it's supposed to, any tie is broken by the House of Representatives. Well, went to the House of Representatives, and there's a bunch of Federalists in the House of Representatives. They don't like Thomas Jefferson because he's kind of the poster boy for the other side. So the House of Representatives votes to break the tie, and they tie themselves. Each state gets 1 vote. You can see that Kentucky and Tennessee and Vermont have been added. So now we've got 16 states. Okay? So they tie 8-8. And then they vote again, and they tie, and they vote again, and they tie, and they vote again, and they tie, and they vote again, again. I lost count. They tied 35 times. They needed somebody to break the tie, and so the guy who breaks the tie is, and you know the song, probably.
And if you were to ask me who I'd promote, Jefferson has my vote.
Hamilton. Hamilton breaks the tie and pushes his support towards Jefferson. Jefferson becomes president. Aaron Burr becomes vice president. And Aaron Burr doesn't do anything as vice president anyways. And this shows that the Electoral College is broke because now that there's political parties, there's always going to be a tie. All right? Plus, we also know that something happens between Hamilton and Burr a little later where they get into a little bit of a squabble, and then Burr shoots Hamilton.
Number 10, Paces Fire!
So now the original Electoral College is going to change because now the electoral votes are going to, for president and vice president, are going to be done separately. That's the 12th Amendment. That's Electoral College reform. That's a change to the Constitution added on after the Bill of Rights. All right, so good so far, I hope. Now, how does the Electoral College work today? I'm going to spit some information at you, and so, wear a face screen. But then we're going to make sense of this in class, all right? So here's how the Electoral College works today. Every state has the same number of electoral votes as it has members of Congress. I'm going to say that again. Every state has the same number of electoral votes as it has members of Congress. So it's, a question mark for the House, depends on, the bigger the state, the bigger the electoral, or the bigger the House of Representatives, and 2 for the Senate. So we know that Wisconsin has 8 representatives, 2 senators, so Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes. Every 4 years, each political party in the state names electors. All right, it's kind of an honorary position, but these electors, they're chosen by the political parties. They are pledged to vote for certain candidates for that political party. So the Democratic Party in Wisconsin will name 10 people. The Republican Party will name 10 people. The Green Party will name 10 people. The Libertarian Party will name 10 people. You get the picture. And so technically, we are not voting for a candidate. We're voting for 10 people who are pledged to that candidate. So that's what happens in every state. In every state, you're voting for a candidate. All right? This was a sample from some of the people that ran in Wisconsin in 2016. And you can see that it says their names on it says the names of the candidates on the ballot, but in reality, we're voting for the electors for those candidates. Now, whichever candidate in that state gets the most popular votes, the most people vote for that candidate, they win all of the electoral votes. So it doesn't matter if you win that state by a little or you win that state by a lot, you get all of the electoral votes of that state. Winner take all. It's like that in every state except for Maine and Nebraska. Now, why are Maine and Nebraska different? Because they can be, because states run their own elections. It's part of their reserve powers, and they've just decided to be different. I'll tell you exactly how they do it when we get into class. So here we are in the great state of Wisconsin. If you win the popular vote in Wisconsin, you get all 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin. Again, the most people vote for a candidate in Wisconsin, they get all 10 of the electoral votes. So in 2016, this is what Wisconsin looked like. Donald Trump got 1.4 million electoral or popular votes. Hillary Clinton got 1.38 million popular votes. So Donald Trump, by winning the most popular votes, gets all of the electoral votes, all 10. And this doesn't add up to 50% because there are some other smaller candidates. Now, that's going to happen in every state, and then to win the presidency, a candidate has to win a majority of the electoral votes. A majority is defined as 50% plus 1. There are a total of 538 electoral votes. Think of the math. There's 100 senators. There are 435 representatives. And they added an amendment to the Constitution to give our good friends in Washington, D.C., right here, they get 3 electoral votes as well, because they don't have any senators or representatives, so they would not cast a vote for the president. The territories do not have electoral votes, so there are 538 electoral votes. A majority is 270. That's the magic number that we're looking for every 4 years on election night, and that's what we're going to look for in class as well. Now, I'm going to stop there and tell you to, number one, don't be confused. Because if you don't get it, that's why I'm here, my friends. Come up with some questions. There are some resources for you on your Friendly Neighborhood American History Rules website. You can take a look at some of these, come up with some more questions. If you want to use the poll everywhere and toss some questions on there, that would be awesome. All right. And also, there's a game you can play from iCivics, so you can, figure out a little bit more. And then, if you want to play around with some of these sites, that's fine. But the most important thing is that you come to class with a little bit of a background and a lot of questions, because that's how we learn. Questions are cool. They make us gooder learners. All right, so we'll take care of this in class, and also talk to your parents about it, because they might know a little bit. And if they don't, you can teach them. That's how I learned this stuff. All right. Well, we'll see you in class.